Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
A little bit of what the kids were up against when the initial estimates of how much rainfall would come were later corrected overnight, I guess, when a lot of kids were sleeping in the early morning hours, the kids and adults alike. And what these young and old alike were up against. Ruffin Boyette, a Camp La Junta camper, who survived along with his brother, providing a description of what they had to do to survive.
I'm one of the campers from Camp La Junta, one of the camps that flooded, and I had a first-hand view of the flood, and so the cabins were flooding, and the walls were like they broke down, and all of the campers in those cabins had to go up on the rafters, and they had to wait there until they could swim out. And my brother here, he had to swim out of his cabin.
The flood started getting bigger, and it was going up to, we have bunk beds in our cabins, and it was going up to the top bunk, and we had one choice, and we had to swim out of our cabins.
What time was it?
It was like, we woke up at 2.
Yeah, we had to wake up at like 4 a.m. But on the way here, we saw all of like the other camps destroyed, like obliterated.
And can you tell me, how'd you guys get out of there? They put you guys on buses, or did you have
Yes.
to wait?
Yeah, we had to get on a bus.
Yes, we had to get on a bus. We were in other cabins for like cabins on hills for about 17 hours waiting until
we hosted a cabin.
buses get here, and it was not fun.
Yeah, it was not fun. A lot of heart-wrenching stories, unfortunately. Here's a Texas mom and her daughter, young girl, on the flooding, and the young girl talking about losing her friend.
Really good friends lost a daughter that was at Camp Mystic. They've just had so much loss that, I mean, it's unimaginable. And then, they're still pulling people out of the river, and we don't even know to the extent of who we know that has lost their lives.
My friend Nene was just so funny. I've been scrolling through videos and pictures on my mom's phone and watching it over and over again. Her dancing when she's excited.
Yeah.
She was so nice, and I just miss her so much.
Caroline Wren posted this on X. I went to camp for 10 years on the Guadalupe River, just a couple miles down from Camp Mystic. The tragedy hits close to home. Since there's tons of information flying around, here's what I'm hearing from friends and family in the area and with kids at the camps. Camp Mystic is an all-girls Christian camp on the Guadalupe River and opened in 1926, has been run by the same family since the 1930s. The current owners have been with the camp since 1974, and she was hearing at the time that Dick Eastland, the husband of the couple, died in the flooding, but that was unconfirmed, while trying to rescue the young campers in the Bubble Inn and Twins cabins. These two cabins are along the river and are the 7 and 8-year-old campers, the youngest age group at the camp. Cabins reportedly washed away, and almost, if not all, of the 27 missing kids from Camp Mystic are those from 2 cabins, including 2 camp counselors, age 19. At least 2 of those precious children are confirmed dead by their families, and the bodies have been recovered. This is over the weekend. There are about 40 summer camps in the area along the Guadalupe River. Thankfully, most of the camps were between terms, so they did not have campers on site. Camp Waldemar, which I attended, was in session, but all the cabins are up on a hill, and Waldemar has confirmed all campers and counselors are accounted for. Heart of the Hills, a girls' camp just down the river from Camp Mystic, thankfully out of session. However, Jane Ragsdale, the longtime co-owner and director of the Heart of the Hills, died in the floods. Camp La Junta, you heard from the 2 brothers, is an all-boys camp across from Mystic. That camp, where you've seen the footage of the cabin washing away with all the young boys in it, miraculously, the camp says all the campers are alive and accounted for. Camp Stewart, another all-boys camp just to the river, was between terms, so no campers were on site either. They were actually set to arrive after the flooding occurred. So just to give you a little bit of the history there, that these are camps, many camps that have long been in existence, passed from generation of family to generation of family. So for people suggesting all the things that should have been done to prevent this or to respond more quickly once it became clear that this weather situation was getting out of control, it might be a little bit more complicated than just saying, how could you let this happen? For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Phil Ambrose, who's the founder of HazSim, a training device for first responders. He's also the current battalion chief in Southern California, where they're used to floods as well. Phil Ambrose, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. This is just listening to you read that off. It's just such terrible news. It's what as a parent, just horrible to listen to.
Oh yeah, the young kids, it's brutal. There's some. I just want to throw out a couple of things I've heard in terms of what could have helped. That's the speculative banter you get in the immediate wake of tragedies like this. One suggestion was that the National Weather Service didn't have appropriate staff, and so they missed getting wind of this earlier than they could have. In point of fact, the National Service Office in New Braunfels, which delivers forecasts for Austin, San Antonio, and the surrounding areas, had extra staff on duty during the storms, according to an official there. Where they normally have 2 forecasters on duty during clear weather, they had 5 on staff. So there were extra people there actually responding. And then the second suggestion was maybe you have sort of flood sirens, like you have a fire alarm or something like this that could have alerted the adults and as well as the kids a bit earlier than they were alerted, since a lot of the situation got much more dangerous overnight when a lot of them were asleep, as you heard from those 2 boys.
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the first things that comes to mind, one of the first incidents like this I was actually in my 20s on a recovery that was a father and son that were swept away in a flash flood. And the one thing that every single person that we had bumped into, interviewed on our way to the area for the recovery was how clear the weather was. And I'm not sure, I wasn't there in Texas, but one thing about any sort of flash flood that catches people by so much surprise is often where you are will be perfectly clear while it's raining and building up the storm away from you, so that by the time the water starts to rise at such a rapid rate, it just it comes as more of a surprise because it's not actively raining where you are. When it comes to, as far as the staffing there, I did look through at the National Weather Service. I think just like with wildfires, the red flag, for us out here, it's not uncommon to have those types of warnings. And I do wonder a little bit if people get almost complacent to seeing some of the same warnings, because I know for when it comes to floods, with the way the terrain is, it's so difficult to say pinpoint exactly where this may happen. But I did read that they had the appropriate, say level of warnings out, but then it's a matter of if everybody's listening to those. And to what you said about the early warning sirens and everything like that, I can't speak to if all that worked. I know there's the early alert warnings we have here in Southern California for the wildfires for evacuations. Whether something like that was in place, that kind of comes down to a local level of implementing those things. And I'm sure, we're still in the search phase. I know I've heard that they have not decided to take this into a recovery. There still could be children that are alive in some of the areas there. But like I've talked before, when we've talked about wildfires, they will, I'm sure, get the timeline down of what other types of early warning when it comes to, say, the what we would call here the wildland, or the earthquake early alert for them, the reverse 911, the cell phone locations. But what's so difficult about that is when you give an alert, you have to know what area is going to be affected and be able to tell them where to go. And if at the time the emergency managers, well, some of these are very small towns and they're very good, but I've heard that one of the fire chiefs is actually missing in one of those towns. But to make the early early warning effective is not just as easy as flipping one button and everybody knows everything what to do. So
yeah, well, the oversimplification of it too. And the other thing here is, as I mentioned that one woman's post on X, because it provides a little historical context here. You have people that were operating these campsites for generations through their families, so they know the terrain and they know the environment. And this was obviously something that was anomalous, but not everybody, but there's a certain element of the population that immediately wants to go to, if only government would have been a little bit bigger, if only we would have had, one more redundant alarm system, and all of this could have been prevented or minimized. And it's just not that easy to say.
No, I mean, heck, let's take the numbers for 4th of July weekend and how many children may have drown in pools across the U.S. that were all preventable. I mean, there's so many ways you can look at it. And in this case, I know 2015 they had the floods there. My wife's from Texas, so immediately with the hill country, she said, "Oh yeah, that's not uncommon." But like you're pointing out, if somebody's had generations on that riverbed and the experience of how and then you get one of these catastrophic events, I think for the National Weather Service, for the responders, and I did see also that between Texas Task Force 1, which is one of the best in the country, especially at that type of operation, that they had people pre-deployed, similar to what we do in wildfires here, and I'm sure they've done that on other weather events, and then it just hit at a level that was so much bigger magnitude than probably anybody ever thought.
Just since we have you here, and you mentioned wildfires, can you update us on the status of the recovery from the devastating LA wildfires? I mean, some of the reports we've had in recent weeks suggest that, maybe there's been a couple of homes that have been rebuilt since those fires. It doesn't seem to, at least according to some of the reports we've seen, the recovery doesn't seem to be happening at a particularly rapid pace.
I am not in the wildfire area, but I can give you firsthand. My son, who's home from college for a couple of weeks, who goes out there in Purdue, he said, "Dad, can I take a drive up to Malibu?" And I said, "Sure, I think it's open." And he sent me a series of pictures, and quite frankly, his trip up the coast looked no different than it did a few months ago, with still burned out structures, burned out cars, and he came back pretty sad, said, "Dad, it looks terrible." And we are now in July, and that happened in January, so I would say that things have been moving quite slow.
That's discouraging. Phil Ambrose, founder of HazSim, a training device for first responders, current battalion chief in Southern California. Phil, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
And he joins us on the Turnkey.Pro line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Healthcare is complicated. It doesn't have to be. If you don't love how your health insurance works, maybe it's time to leave traditional health insurance behind.